Well, we live in a very interesting planet, the only planet where we know there is life and people, And this life is so different from place to place. And if you're born in a tiny part of this globe, you have no idea what is in another part, as a young person. But when you then come out and see, you feel like it's a shock for you, when you see difference, because you live in a small, tiny community like I did. I was born in a small community in the west coast of Norway. And 15, I had to go on board a ship because everyone, young man from that place, had to go on board the ship and come back and continue school. So this ship was going to Africa from that small place. It was a small factory there, and they brought ferro alloys from Africa and things like that, manganese. And when we came to the Gold Coast, which was the name of that place, it was a colony, today Ghana. Everyone on board, all the Norwegians, got a slave. We got one person to do our work, so we could just relax and have a nice time. And coming there and seeing that the difference, how a colonial colony worked, there was no human rights, there were nothing like I was used to, I really got a shock. I got a shock of my life, and I think, is world like that, It's terrible, So I think this has had such an impression on me that I really felt upset, and I felt that we must try to do something here. But what can you do as a single individual? There are more than 6 billion people in the world. And if you count a billion, you have to count for 3 years. And it's impossible to understand how much 6 billion is. So how much can one person do? But you learn something, that is something called network. You find people like yourself also wanting to do something, and if you can work together with them, if you can organize something, you know that you have a chance to at least move a few inches in the world, and that's probably enough. I've often asked myself, what have I achieved in the world in the work with Worldview as an NGO, international NGO? There are many NGOs and many people are trying. And I ask myself, is it worth it? We have a project in Bangladesh which prevents blindness among children. And when we started, there were 30,000 children getting blind every year. This is an enormous human tragedy, which is unnecessary, because it was due to A vitamin deficiency, and there's enough A vitamins. And using communication, we were able to more or less reduce it to nearly zero today. And then I said to myself, if I can help that prevent one child from becoming blind, it is worth it. And now there are thousands of children which has been protected from becoming blind. I don't know them, they are different from me and so on, but I know that they will have at least a chance to make a better life, because 50% of those children who got blind died the first year. It's a physical and psychological torture for them, if you get blind like that, and So I think that if you can do something for one person, only one person in life, I don't think you have lived in vain. It may not be the big thing, but also you see that there are people who do really big things, and they inspire us, like Gandhi, for instance, who could fight the mighty imperialist power those days, single-handed, just with human values, breaking the law, taking thousands of people along with him and making salt in the sea, which was forbidden, things like that. There are big people who really can do things, and they inspire the small ones like me. But I think that if I can do something for one, that is something, at least I don't need to be shameful of, that I have lived.
So why do you persevere still? Because you have saved that one, I'm sure. There is something more.
Right? Well, I want to save two. I'm trying to save the second, I will tell you another shock I got, I was a reporter, television reporter, and the day when we had only state television in Norway, everyone had to see my lousy reports. And they loved it because there was nothing else, So I followed the stream of refugees from Bangladesh, East Pakistan into India. There were 3 million people moving in there, you know, it was terrible. And I came to a refugee camp with a lot of misery. Then I saw under a small cart, hand cart, a man dying. He was totally dehydrated. You could see the bones here in his chest, and it was like a drum, you know, the stomach was just flat, you know, like the air had gone out of it, you know. And I could see he was struggling to survive. And I got a shock. This was the first time I saw a dying man, you know. And I ran to the director of the center and said, "There's a man dying over there. You must come quickly." And he looked at me and said, "Who is that?" I said, "Man, yeah, what is his age?" "Well, he look old, but you must..." I said, "We don't have capacity to take care of everyone. We have to be choosy here, you know. We can only take a few, save a few. And it's too late. I think you just let him die, you know." You feel totally helpless, you know. A man laying there as a human being, and life is worth nothing. You really understand it's worth nothing. So when you see one single person like that, and you see that there have been dramas with millions of people dying, you know, like the biggest natural catastrophe in our time, which happened in Bangladesh the 11th of November 1970. When a big wave, flood wave came in from the Bay of Bengal in a storm, 8 meters high, you know, and there's a flat land. It swept away everything. There's like a doomsday for the people, you know. And as a reporter, that is what we want to tell, you know, shocking news, you know. 3 million people died. It started with the first report was 6 people died. People didn't have a clue, and they didn't want to tell the whole truth. But when the truth came out, the whole world came there with helicopters and planes and with all kind of helping things. So I was lifted up by a helicopter coming from Vietnam. Instead of killing people there, they came to help people in Bangladesh. This was in 1970 when the Vietnam War was on. And I was lifted up in the helicopter, and we could see endless destruction there. And you saw hundreds and thousands of cattle laying with this on their back with stomach up, you know, like balloons, and you could see people there dying, dead people. It was terrible. 3 million people. It shocked the whole world. Then we were taken to Dhaka, that was the capital of East Pakistan those days, and you see another shock, which no one bothered about, the permanent poverty, you know, which was much worse in the city and around the country. And people dying every day, not only one day and one night, but every day. And no one bothered, you know. Then you really wonder, you know, what is this all about, you know? Why do we react so suddenly when we get the big thing and the story in the newspapers, but the permanent poverty, you know, the permanent misery doesn't matter, you know. It doesn't matter. We are Christians, we go to church, we pray to God, we feel we are better than others probably, and we want to be like Christ. And we spend all of our money on ourselves and let people die. And the world, if we really took our values seriously, the world would have been completely different, you know. But so we are hypocrites. And I also the same. I came there, you see a man dying under a hand cart, you see 3 million people die there, you know. What you do? You go to a good hotel, you eat good food, and you go back to your own country and forget about the whole thing, you know. So I think it's a very strange place, this world, you know. I don't think we are honest with ourselves and with others. We live in a fiction world, you know, in many ways. And we think we can probably escape from the whole thing. But I think it is haunting us every time we think of it. And it's one story I will tell you. I was in Africa. It's a famine in 85. It was a terrible famine there, you know. And what do you do as a TV reporter? You try to illustrate what is happening. And then you grab a small child there who is dying. And the mother had brought him to the priest, the local shaman. And they thought he was starved, you know. But they said he is haunted by an evil spirit. So they burned his body. They took fire and burnt to get the evil out of the body. So the boy was full of marks on his body, and he was dying, and but you grab him and use him as an illustration, which is also wrong in this sense, a kind of social pornography, but that's what you do to explain. And you have him in your arms, that small body, and you tell to the people that this is a dying boy, you know, and this is the situation for thousands of children here in this place, and this is the reality. Then you give him back to the mother, and next day he is dead. So when I come home and see my own children, healthy, well looked after, and so on, I don't know what to do, you know, it's terrible. Another time in Bangladesh, that was the worst in my memory I can take now. It was after the drought there. Either you have flood or you have drought. It had been drought for some time, and people in the countryside had no food, so they flocked to the capital. Most of them went to the railway station where they stayed overnight, and every morning lorries came to pick up the dead bodies, and they just picked them up like pieces of wood, you know, and put them on the lorry, which went out of town and dumped them somewhere, you know, and then they came back the next morning for another load. I was on my way home sitting in a cycle rickshaw. When you sit in a cycle rickshaw, you come very close to people on the street, you know, there is no walls you see. And so I was sitting there and had just got, those days you had also to get visa to leave the country. So I had just got the visa to leave the country, and I was very happy to go back home because impressions are so terrible, you know. And then suddenly in the street, I see a lady laying down there. She is dying, and she has a baby in her arms. And he lifts with the last will, you know. She lifts the baby up. She is very weak, but can lift it up for someone to stop and take it. And I sit in the cycle rickshaw, very privileged, and he is moving slowly so I can follow that drama for some time. And I tell to myself, I must stop. So I tell myself, stop. And I think I have to take care of that baby. Then I start thinking, practically, you know, the plane is leaving in 3 hours. If I stop, take care of the baby, where do we leave the baby? Even if I leave it to the police station, I'm not sure unless I stay back and take care of it. And I may miss my plane, you know, I have films, I'm on the air next morning, all kind of things. So I tell, no, we go. But that incident never leave you, you know. You go back to that many times and you still wonder, did I do the right thing, you know? As a human being, we should have stopped. But as a practical person, wanting to go home you know, with the film, I just passed it. But it's haunting all the time, you know, because you really think you did the wrong thing. But if I had stopped, it could have been so many practical problems, you know, that made me go on, you know. But just a little of all the things which is carved into your mind and you can never get rid of, because it is people, you know. It is people. It's like yourself. They have the same feelings, the same thing, the same desire to live, the same right to live, you know. And that is world. It's a terrible world. It's cruel, mean, terrible world. And then you meet people who really lights up, you know. So I can't say that everything is hopeless. There are also good people, you know. Someone is trying to do things, and some even succeed. Some try to do and they don't succeed, and they feel probably terrible, but they have tried at least, you know. So if you can tell everyone that try something, we can't change the world, but we can hopefully help one person, and it's worth it. I've learned one thing, that we can be happy with very little, you know. This is one of the few shirts I have, 2-3 trousers. That is enough, you know, because you can only have one thing on you at the same time. And what is normal, you mentioned what is normal. If everyone had lived like Mother Teresa, that would have been normal, you know. And then it wouldn't have been difficult, because we all would have taken our share, you know. But we also have other commitments, you're quite right. I think the family system is keeping the social fabric in place and the value base in place, you know. And we have also a commitment to family. And I have probably failed many times there because I've been so absorbed in my work. But I've been privileged. I have had a wife that's really done quite a lot for children and so on, so that has helped. But you have to strike a balance, that is true. If you have taken the responsibility for a family, if you have someone close to you, you can't neglect them either. That's also wrong, So I think everyone must decide for themselves what they can do, what they can achieve. Some have a lot of energy, a lot of drive, they can do more. Some are born with less. Some are staying in a bed probably whole of their life. Some are even linked to a machine to keep them alive. What can they do? If they can make a smile once in a while, and that can be a big achievement for them, So I think we all are different, and we have to decide for ourselves what we want to do and can do.
And why do you think, what did you decide to do, and why was that?
I have not decided to do anything. It just happened to be like that, You're dragged into something, you get involved in something, not because you decided yourself. I never planned to come to Sri Lanka and do things there, but I was involved in things, and suddenly things happen, and you have no choice. You have to come and try to do something just to protect yourself, and come out of it in a nice way. And then you start something, you get ideas, you get people along with you, and you have to finish it up, So like making a cake. You can't stop halfway and say you have made a cake, That will be terrible. You didn't, you have to finish what you started. So it started unplanned for me, and I never had any idea what would happen. When I look back to my life, I really wondered, was that the way it went, I'm surprised myself.
And what did you do?
Me?
What is it?
I just tried to help my friends, I was a radio reporter. I was asked by my boss to interview 3 youth from Sri Lanka, come to that place to study fisheries and boat building. I did my job, interviewed them. We became very close friends, and their dream was to go back to start a fisheries project. I was in a position I could organize fundraising for them and organize other things for them because I had that ability. They didn't have, so I helped them with money and support, and they went back. I never had planned to come here. Why should I be here? They could do it, but then they ended up in big trouble, and I have raised the money, felt also responsible for the whole thing, and hoped I could help by coming down here, only for a short time, for half a year, and go back and never come here again. And it started like that, and you got involved in more and more, and things like that. And suddenly you are stuck. You can't just cut off, you have to try to finish up, So that project lasted for 15 years before we could hand it over. It was a big fisheries project with 2,000 people. That's a huge, became very huge. Too big, actually, And it was based on the wrong notion that technology will save the problems for the third world. There have been so many different fashions in this, And development decades with so many slogans, all have failed. Because every time you forget what it is about people, nothing else, not technology, But in those days, in the 60s and 70s, technology was what the third world needed. And we brought the wrong technology all the time and messed up. So that's why we had to stay for 15 years to try to make it work, And it worked. It was quite good, but it took a long time. And I think also if you start development work, you must have a very long time aspect. I had a friend coming to Sri Lanka last week. He had been there for a Norwegian organization. They had been involved in many, many good projects in villages, taking 200 people from the slum, bringing them into meaningful life, building houses for them, schools, giving them land, training in how to grow spices and things like that. So before he left from Norway, he called that organization. He had been there 15 years ago. Said, I want to go and see. They said, don't go. Why? Because you will be very disappointed. He went, nothing left, all gone. Because the whole strategy is wrong, But it was praised as very successful projects. As long as you have money, you can pay for it, take people out of the slum, bring them up there, pay for everything. After 4 years, successful thing, you write back home and you close the project and leave them alone. But the trend in the country cannot be stopped, So this will eat up all this, Normalcy will take over. What happened was that, of course, they grew their spices, they had to sell them. Then middlemen come, they give you some advance, and then your daughter is getting married, you need money for dowry, and you take a bigger loan from the middlemen. You have to sell your stuff, and the price is then suddenly low, and you cannot maintain the loan you have taken from them. And one day they are the owner of your house and everything, you know. And then things go like that. So it is a crime, I think, to go for those small projects for short term and think you can really change, real change, you know. You can change for some time, like taking a headache pill. The headache goes, but after some time it comes back, and it's there permanent unless you do something. Don't attack the symptoms, but you must attack the causes. We should learn from that.
And what are the causes, Arne?
I think the causes is very complicated, but you can see them after some time. Causes are the way people think and behave. And unless people can work together, it is a curse, you know, for everyone. And that is a curse for this country where we are now. It is so fragmented, you know, and people can't work together. It's the way they think. It's a beautiful culture. There's so many good things here. But things are going wrong, you know, since everyone seems to be working against each other in politics and everywhere else. And it doesn't help to come with things unless you can really contribute something which brings people together, I think. So my concept for development has changed dramatically. I think the only concept for development is to empower people with knowledge and with different outlooks, if that is possible. It is possible, and especially with technology you can reach far today with low cost. And I think development in Norway, in my country, how did it happen? There were no United Nations, no UNDP, no World Bank, no Asian, no European Development Bank, nothing. It happened by people themselves, but it took time. Norway was the poorest country in Europe in 1905 when we got our independence. If you see the statistic in the capital, child mortality was 250. It's very high, you know, extremely high, like in Afghanistan today, more or less, you know. Every family had someone with tuberculosis. Lepra was quite common, and people were starving. All these symptoms were there, you know. Why did it change? It changed because people became aware that they had power to do something themselves, you know. They organized themselves in health clubs in the rural areas, in youth organizations. Then you got the trade unions. And what happened there? You learned how to speak. You learned how to write reports, how to do small, simple accounts. You understood something about how things function in the social organism in the country. And you could stand up and got a political view on things. You could speak with other people listening. You are not shy any longer. You took the responsibility there and solved your own problems in small scale. And things moved on, you know. That's what we call public education. I think public education changed the whole thing. And if you see the statistic over tuberculosis, which was terrible in Europe in those days, it is a steep decline long before medicines came. Why is that? Because people became aware. Before, they spit all over, coughed all over, and spread bacteria all over. They didn't know. But when they came to know that something is called bacteria, you can't see them, but they are in the spit and so on, and they infect other people, they behave better, you know, because they could restrain themselves. And then you got this small, what you call it in English, where you spit.
Spittoon.
Yeah, spittoon, yes. That was the biggest medical revolution in Europe, in my view, you know. That one, simple thing. And then you see, and I think the same thing, we must be patient with development, take time and give people a chance. People must have a chance, you know. And people must be organized. Why are people poor? Because they are exploited and because they're not aware and so many other things. But if the poor people can be strengthened, you know, by making demands, real demands for their own, demands of something they should have, you know, but have not got, you know. Like Professor Yunus in Bangladesh, who say that credit It's a human right. If the poor get credit, they can solve their own problems, you know. And it's a truth in that. He has proved that is right. He has helped millions of people in Bangladesh with just that simple thing, you know, to give them little advance of money so they can solve and start things. So I think that is the key to development, people. And that is forgotten in World Bank and Asian Development Bank and every. They send some people, they call it technical support, you know. And there are always big, well-paid consultants coming. We argued with Asian Development Bank that we have to do something on television on poverty. And after 4 years of hard argument, they gave us money. But condition was that we had 3 consultants from local and 2 international consultants to do that. And they would take most of the budget, so there could be very little television out of it. And the chief consultant came here. He had been working for the bank earlier. He was regarded as an expert on poverty. He said that we must have experts to tell about poverty. You must have statistics about poverty and things like that. And it became so crazy that I told the bank, if this goes on, we will stop the whole project. There's no point. We want all these consultants out. We want to let the poor people talk themselves, because they are the only one expert in poverty, and they survive. If this man who was the expert had been sent to a poor village, he would have died after 2 days. He couldn't stay in our office because we didn't have air condition. He demanded air condition in his room, you know. Stayed in a 5-star hotel. He wanted to be picked up by car every morning. These people have no idea what poverty is. They may know the statistics. They may know the figures. But they don't know the agony, they don't know the broken dreams, they don't know the terrible thing to be poor, you know. So I think we have to be honest also and try to use resources in the right way. So I feel that many of those so-called development concepts are totally wrong, and we should be honest. And we must also be honest and say most of our development efforts have failed miserably. There are more poor people today than before. Not probably because of all the development aid, but it has been very little effective for the poor, at least, you know. There's one UN agency which really have been honest, that is IFAD, the International Fund for Agriculture Development. When they reached 10 years in 1984, they had a study on poverty in the world. And they concluded that development aid may sometimes be against the poor. Because if you pour in much money in a society, where the rich are dominating, they will absorb that money and be stronger to suppress the poor even, you know. So it's not a question of money, it's a question of attitudes and concepts and respect for people. And that's very difficult to sell, you know. So I think that is the case.
Arne, you talked, we were talking earlier about if you had a page that everybody in the world would read or have read to them, what would you write on that page?
Yeah, it's an impossible question. You know, who can write in one page what is about that?
But
yeah.
Thing that matters to you.
No, it's not only what matters to me, but about what is the most powerful, the most powerful force in life. That is love, you know. And I don't mean sex and things like that, which you often say is love, you know, but really love, passion, respect for others, and also willingness to care for others, you know, love. And if every human being could love another human being like that, there will be no more problems in life, you know. I think that could take care of everything. If we could love each other, understand each other, respect each other more, have more passion and more willing to listen and to help than to talk and to think of ourselves, you know, and fill our pockets. It's attitude again, you know, the way we think, the way we behave, nothing else. And love is the most powerful force in life, you know. And there are many things from history that this has changed dramatically. Now we are in Asia, using King Asoka. He was the most powerful person as a military leader. Then his life changed, and he started to predict love, you know. And he really did big things, which was not to kill and grab land and so on, but changed completely. That is, I think, a big achievement, you know, to do that. And we have here also, you must not forget Buddha, You had all you dream of in life: power, money, beautiful wife, nice children, protection. He lived in a palace. Everything was there. What we dream of achieving, you know, we small people want to be in the palace. And when he came out from that protection, for first time, to see life as it was, with beggars on the street, people dying, poverty, filth, garbage, everything terrible, he got a shock of his life. And he gave up everything. I think that is full commitment, you know, to give up everything, you know, of that beautiful thing what people dream of. And that's what made Buddha's message so strong, you know. Not only what he said, but he proved by his life, the attitude, the way of doing it, you know, and that we lack today. People talk so nice, but they don't live like they talk, you know. They don't give in, you know. They want to have all the best and look good and talk good. And so you can see his message is still there, 2,500 years. Probably it's partly garbled up and so on. People are, you know, messing up all the time, but it's strong there still. And you can travel all over Asia, in far remote corners of forests in northern China and Mongolia. And suddenly you see, in no one's land, big Buddhist statues where people lived before, carved out in stone, you know. They are there as a memory of something big which happened. And his message went like flames all over India. Before you had radio, newspapers, nothing. It's only by mouth and by horseback and walk, mostly walk, you know. So it's fantastic. I came very close to the Jain monks in India. We had a big seminar with them on peace. 15,000 people came. I never spoken to so many people in my life, you know, all dressed in white. And this is said to be the oldest religion in the world. And again, total commitment. The monks there, they live like they preach. They can own nothing, you know. Some of them can't even have clothes because that is something which will harm others. They have taken something from others and put on them. They're vegetarians, they own nothing. When they walk, they sweep the path so they don't tread on any insects, you know. They kill nothing. They can't go by car, by bicycle, they have just to walk. And that has probably go back 7,000 to 8,000 years ago when the first civilization appeared in Mohenjo-daro and the Indus Valley. And so you meet them, they're still alive, you know, they're still there and totally committed, you know, total commitment, you know. That's fantastic, and that exists today. There are people like that. Unbelievable, you know. It's like you get a little bit crazy. Not a little, I think you got very crazy, you know. I think I'm a crazy person. Because if I had told in the beginning when we started like Worldview with communication, if I told the whole story what they wanted to do, I think I would be locked in Norway. You know, they will take me lunatic. He must be locked in because there we make everyone a client. State have to take care of you, you know. They feed you and everything like that in institutions. Institutionalized me, so I kept quiet to protect myself. But the last thing I think I'm hoping to achieve with help with others, I can't do it alone, is to do something more meaningful with television in the world. Arne Vittachi, he said that man invented television and the ape got hold of it. I think that is becoming more and more correct, you know, because this fantastic instrument, which is low cost, which can reach all over, today there are majority of the people in the world have television. And majority of the people in the world get their information from television, even the remote villages in Indonesia. And in Britain, for instance, more than 75% I think get information on development through television, for instance. But most of the television is what I will say crap, you know. It is just how to be a millionaire and all kind of things, you know. And then music videos which propagate sex, violence, drugs, things like that, you know. It's crazy, it's misused, definitely. Apes are running it. If we could get something, use television in a more meaningful way, but still entertainment, because you can't change that television has become an entertainment medium. That is there, but you can, through entertainment, also be bringing education and information. But it's probably more difficult, but it can be done. So the dream I have, and I think I should be able to together with others do that, is to have a global television on cultures, lifestyles, which you don't see in other television networks, with programs from different countries. We don't make them, we get them. You know, there are tremendous amount of good programs outside America and outside Britain, which never comes to a global audience. It is stopped at these national boundaries, you know, boundaries. That is available. I have discussed, I've got the promise from Asian Broadcasting Union, Urtna in Africa and the Latin Americans. They will, the stations will give free programs there. So we can put them together and broadcast them so we can learn more about each other. They say we live in a global village, but we don't know anything about our neighbors, you know, very little. So we get suspicious, we think Muslims are only terrorists, Muslims think Christians will just take the oil and all kind of things, you know, which is nonsense, but that builds up very dangerous situations. We have seen that wars and things like that, terrorist attacks and so many things, you know. And both these groups think they are right, you know. But I think if we can learn more about each other and see we're not so dangerous after all. We are all normal people, scared of each other, or wanting to be in peace. We want safety and security. We want at least 3 decent meals a day and things like that. If we can do that in our cultures, enormous amount of rich cultures in the world, you know, we really see. It's enormous. We live in small corners of the world and think what we do is culture. Fine. But if we see so many other cultures, we really get amazed, you know. That is entertainment. Fantastic, you know. People eating flames or drumming in a way you have never seen before, you know. I never thought it was possible even. That is something, you know. Mind-blowing things are there in videotapes or in digital formats. You just take it out, put it together, and spread it around the world. So we will say that this channel should create better understanding and a better world. That is my dream, to do that, you know. And I wish I can work with you and others, and we can. It shouldn't be difficult, you know. I think it doesn't need to cost much either, and it can be sustainable, the way we are planning that now. So if I can do that, then I will run to my grave immediately. You know, the day we have cut the ribbon, it is on the air. I don't have more to do in the world. I will go into my coffin, put the lock over, and say, "No, I have done mine. What I can do, you know."
Thank you, Arne.